Yes, good day. 11:42 a.m. in 4/21/2025. I'm Grantor Lamont Belton, sui juris at law, translating to you from the Great Seal Perseverando, or back this way, shall I say? Okay, this specific seal here. This seal, Great Seal Perseverando, make sure I go back here, is a seal that is domesticated. You may know the state of Virginia, which would be the trustee seal in terms for the employee six simpter terminus. That is for the state of Virginia, those employees respects to their secretary for the corporate body that is distinguished from Great Seal Perseverando, which is the sovereign or the body at 1-500. And of course, this is what the United States colonies and fraternities oath or swore to, and we happen to be the revenue of the oversight to that. So what I want to do today is to share with you one situation in terms of correcting inadequacies or inaccuracies. So I'm going to share with you, brother, good planet Earth brother, shall I say, bailiff deputy Abu the senior. What is the name of that broadcast, sir? If you can share with I again, what's the name of that broadcast? I'm going to counter. The anchor would be Miss Nicola Charles, and that is on the what type of Australian broadcast she was talking in terms of one that had brought precedents. There was no legal precedents pertaining to the Uniform Commercial Code. Okay, in terms of everybody was enslaved. Yes, sir.
Respect General Marshall Abu Coleridge King.
Yes.
That was the Daily Australian radio show.
Okay, say that again.
The Daily Australian radio show.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. And that broadcast I saw yesterday, and it actually was translated to and they brought up a man's name by the name of Govinda Titvel, and his nationality would be East Indian, as they were sort of describing. However, he's living in Tejas or Texas. Okay, so I'm an actual what you may call official that is of the Great Seal Perseverando. So we had countered via you may call, we go back through the archives on this specific channel here, and you would see a sequence of YouTube official press in terms of what we had shared with you all. I suing the Commonwealth of Virginia, or at the time, that was a William Davenport, a good friend of ours. Okay, and it was actually here, this vanilla envelope we had shared with most people. You might can't see it the way that you want to see it. But if you go back to the broadcast, you would know that the letters and numbers that brought that up in terms of that proof of suing them was on the basis that they had illegally tried to violate a member of my national tribe. And I had placed a lien on the Uniform Commercial Code system in 2008 because it was not operating as it is defined for natural beings when it got tied or misdirected or was left at the hands of an administration that would be in contest or be in opposition to the very nature of that. That specific administration was the Virginia State Corporation Commission, and that was in 2008. Joel H. Peck was the commissioner at that time. You had Judith Jagmar and you had Mark Christie that had taken credit for drafting the instruments online, the UCc1, 3, and 5, and 11, and all of these different forms. The Protectorate Gate, from what I comprehend, he had to introduce himself, was here. It was not in what you may call Port or Washington, D.C. So they were not what you may call friendly or respecting the 1930 Geneva Convention, which had annihilated and nullified all of what you may call the legislatures of the states. All of that, in essence, were nullified in 1930. Then they talk about in 1892 or 1895, you went in parallel with the United Nations Declarations of Rights of Indigenous and Tribal Peoples. However, Aboriginal title, I was able to amend that to this specific style UCC, because at the time in the videos or the legal press, if you go back to the sequence, and my deputies can reaffirm here, Mr. Bailiff Deputy, or shall I say, Mr. Houston Barish, Bailiff Deputy, and of course you all did hear from Chief of Coleridge King, Abu Benobe. He's from Ohio, and he'll tell you the natural lands of that. And then we have President Mr. John Muhammad that did work within the State Department that protected people such as John Kerry and Barack Obama, and of course Hillary Clinton and all of these ones. So they're here navigating on this specific post, but the main intention was to counter that, which was on a broadcast on 4/19/2025, which you may call Easter. And the woman blatantly came out and had brought up this specific man name again. Govenda Titvul was not the one who had brought forth the precedents in terms of, oh, the greatest announcement since Christ's birth. No, it was this specific post in 2014. In fact, this lady said that in 2014 that something took place. So we had leaned the Uniform Commercial Code and the system I did specifically and placed in there that it could not be used for public hazardous inventions. In fact, let me see if I can read it specifically in the section. And these are public records. And I placed a lien on the Uniform Commercial Code because, as she was talking about, they were trying to securitize human beings. And I knew that. And of course, I counted them in 25. And let's get to the actual lien here in terms of reading that so that I'm not just talking, okay? But the presidents, in terms of this here, let's go to the section here. Uniform Commercial Code is for natural people, natural jurisdictions. It was to marshal the states and the accounts and to keep integrity, okay? And most of the states I went, everybody that was Caucasian or white at the time, they would talk about themselves or their standing, you know, in black and white. The Christian caste codes of 1724, don't act like you don't know about it. They distinguish certain beings and their fraternities to be black or white people, okay? So anyway, here I said in this specific transmitting utility, all right, this transmit utility is for jurisprudence transmissions for all matters in fact and lex, not for quasi-fictional LLC, political policies, legal constructive fraud, which is in bankruptcy de facto, okay? So I lean the UCC to be an example, and I was able to take Belton and in all caps and navigate it. I defined it, and in essence, I structured the first world anti-tort trust to go after corruptors. Okay, this has been an operational system via the Aboriginal Consular Court, Insular Tribunal, that is chartered with I and Honorable Lee Clegg, as you see in the background, my identification. So if you was to pull up the records and you do your due diligence, you'll see in high-level enforcements, I'm not trying to pretend. I am a lawyer. I am a what you may call a de jure or a prerogative judge in terms of radical title, but Aboriginal title at its finest, because it was necessary for this specific judicial presence to be, because it was not undermining. The very fact and standing and the very nature of Aboriginal title is sui generis in order in terms of the perfection. And we had brought forth the disclosure of Chief Judge Lamere from the Canadian judicial system, the British Columbian system, that had talked in 1996 in terms of the system of referencing that there was Aboriginal law systems and governments that was operable 3,500 plus years before the colonies arrived here. That's the very nature of Aboriginal title. It is applicable to every type of situation, and it conveys in terms of your standing at what you may call customary international law substantive is sustained, okay? So Deputy, if you can, play that video in terms of she sharing this with you and the inadequacies. We have the records. We were not talking in terms of news anchoring. I am the actual being that made these records available, and you can see it again, go back through the sequence, and you would get the video or the records from the official news broadcast on I suing Chesterfield County, and it was on the basis of that, and I'll get to you furthermore on what it is. If you could share with them now, please. Okay, it seemed like we're having some technical difficulties here.
Can you actually see the video?
Yes, I can. Yes.
All right. What about the sound?
No sound yet. Okay.
All right.
But
When you go, when you go back to share, it'll actually say play volume. You click that thing that says volume, and it'll play the volume.
Share. Okay, share sound. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's try that. Okay. And if we have technical difficulties, as I did share with you, we are making a record of this, and you can just go back through the sequence. Last month, I did post the recording, or it might have been 2 or 3 weeks now, and you would see. At any time, if you need to play it, you can, and I'll appropriately behave, so that the people can hear. But of course, the show again, the news anchor is Miss Nicola Charles. And of course, what was that broadcast again, Deputy Abu? If you can bring it up again on the Australian broadcast, what was that? Okay, and maybe he can hear our.
That was Nicole Charles and Mason Auburn
Yes, Auburn.
and Auburn.
Auburn.
Okay.
Auburn.
Auburn, the Daily Australian Radio Show.
Okay, exactly. And she got into this man getting into a discovery of the birth certificates and all of this kind of stuff. And it was something about the placenta, and that they would create an actual twin to the account, so to speak. You have different people that have different views. My point is that I and my marshals have been countering the behavior in the United States. Everything that we attempted to do and do, there was a problem that we could not do. And when we started doing, everybody started copying us. Would that be a fair assessment to say, sir? We are good standing men at law. Is that fair to say that there was right much that we had started doing with that language where we had called the ultimate bluff and appropriately delivered the UCC to people? I mean,
Yeah, this is Deputy Bailiff Burrish. Yeah, that is correct. And as early as 2005, then again 2014.
Yes, correct. And that right there, and I would read just in case we have that. We all know a cut over here, but I'm going to read the back page here. And the basis is what they were found guilty for operating under the civilian bankruptcy, and in terms of that contemptuous behavior. And we did that. I was able to transmit to the world the indictment via Aboriginal Consular Court, and we had transmitted and utilized the statutory agent here in terms of the delivery, in terms of what you may call service of process. And they defaulted miserably in operating what they are defined to do for the specific court. So the legal standing was already within a statutorized capacity. Miss Nicola, what is her last name? Let me make certain. Yes, Mrs. Charles, okay, which is the female news anchor. She would have known that if she'd done her research. So sometimes people want stuff, and this has been an issue for a while. I've been on this for close to 20 years on every broadcast. In fact, when I did the 2008 transmit utility and the UCC and the Juristic and all of that kind of stuff, in CTC, the registered agents were still trying to figure out what the transmit utilities were defined to do. The American Law Institute, and of course, the National Law Commissions for the Commissioners for Uniform State Law, that those specific ones were completely in terms for the statutorized situation. And this is why people that run these broadcasts, this was the greatest announcement this guy did in Tejas since Christ. No, we actually ran the Redemption Christ program, and I named it that. It was initiated from the bad behavior of the Federal Reserve note circulating via Title 31 United States Code, but it would involve her getting paid from her broadcast. I'm quite certain that she gets some type of income some kind of way. So if she's British or if she's American, you would be accepting some form or some style of fiat. Okay, so most people did not jump on this style, or didn't set well with a lot of people, because of course it borderline implemented them in the fraud because you're getting paid in terms of circulating debt. The United States note is a fiat. It only means somebody declared, let it be done, but they didn't have the standing, neither the state is to do so. And the Uniform Commercial Code was something that was created to arrest that bad behavior in finance. And it don't go together, commerce and finance. Commercial is the presentation of good standing and good being, good behavior, clean hands doctrine. So I read a little bit further in this indictment. I reference the Pope Francis, and of course the case numbers were GC140054449. Okay, and there was another case number GC140054550, and I had to counter several of these, what you may call quasi charges to set the record straight in terms of what was necessary domestically for, to make certain that people get what was essential and not the misrepresentation pertaining to our nation. So this was Chesterfield County Commonwealth Attorney William Davenport, the clergy for that. And of course, the Roman civil process status is bankrupt, and that was again November the 12th, 2014. The account or the trust in terms of what I do is the Bailiwick. The standing is respecter of the Great Seal. I am the holder pertaining to that because they had AXI, the highest operational entity is within their commonwealth, is the Virginia State Corporation Commission, which was inadequate at the time that it asked I to perform it. Mr. Belton was mostly like, you got to do everything, out of the mouths of Joel H. Peck. So I began to know that all of my operations at law enforcement would be impaired because, of course, there was an integration of working with them. And this is what you did. So I had outperformed the standing of the commissioners because, of course, they didn't want to reference what you may call the jurisdictional standing and the respective choice of law in terms of the sequence. They have a standing pertaining to them as corporate, and I had at the time had no one that could service I domestically, so I had to, with the skill set of studying law, woving a juristic that would have the standing to facilitate all of what we needed, and people had to start coming to my locale platform to file the appropriate UCCs pertaining to Aboriginal, because there is no secured party creditor in terms of land or commerce if you're not giving the complete disclosure of who is landlord. Okay, that this is Admiralty Maritime, and they're talking about that. So that layered the commissions at the state level, a military regime in terms of secretaries. That's just why they call them secretaries of this, secretaries of finance, secretaries of all of that. Okay, so in short, let me read to you that that was a go without day and a permanent restraining order on all public officials and clergies in America, North, South, and Central America, Pan Americas, and all other lands expressed in treaties and deeds is not to coerce, not to encumber, nor to touch Aboriginal indigenous bodies, his living flesh, without Aboriginal indigenous writ or form of short consent from this specific jurisdiction. Clergy is not to threaten Aboriginal indigenous, their will as de jure sovereign, who is unlevy, unlienable. Liberties. So we keep on further, and never they are to assault again via the Roman civil process, collegio, clergy, public officials, police who are illegal operations now as debtors. And of course, they had at the time their registered agent. They didn't want to disclose all of this. This is why we're bringing it back, because she would have known on yesterday on the 19th. That respects to you, man. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. All right. She would have shared with you all the facts, and she brought up 2014 within there. Did we get that clip yet? If we not, then we'll bring it back when we get the difficulties together.
All right, let's see what happens here.
Okay. And
if you can unshare, because I think your computer background.
Okay, stop. Okay, unshare.
Yeah, stop your share.
All right.
All right. Now let's go here. All right. So let's get her up. All right.
A guy in Texas yesterday. Right now, all of this UCC commercial code, look it up, do your own research, has been allowed to fraudulently use us, human beings, as secured collateral for a long time, probably since 2014. Now, they've been able to do this lawfully because there were legal
It's playing on my
precedents
end.
for it. And
10
yesterday,
4.
the
All
legal
clear. We can
precedent
hear everything
ended. So let me read
and
to you what
see.
has happened. You can look it up in the press. The UCC has now defaulted to the UCC1 news humanity, human beings have ever received since the birth of Christ. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This is over exaggerating when I say this is the biggest news humanity, human beings have ever received since the birth of Christ. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This is the end of slavery. Right. So basically, the headline is mankind is free.
Is that enough?
You can continue to play. Okay.
He says that there was a birth bond issue and he was looking into it, and this is a straw man thing. So he was worried that it was a corruption lever. And as he looked into it, he realized it was. So it's the securitization of the living as a credit value on the dead. Sounds quite confusing. What does that mean? But it means that the living must pay for the dead. So cue the pandemic, right? The living are paying for the dead. So what it basically means is he has children. And once he'd learned all this information, his wife was pregnant and he was about to have a son. When the son was born, because he'd learnt all of this, he, in his birth plan that he gave to the hospital, part of the birth plan was that the family get to keep the cord and the placenta. This is going to sound crazy, but this is what's happened with this UCC1. Because he'd learned that the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, and courts in America had deemed the cord and the placenta, which at the time of birth are alive. They then ask you to, they say to you, would you like to cut the cord? In the moment that you say yes and you cut the cord and the placenta become a deceased twin of the living baby. This is how dark and greedy these people are, and the banks and financial institutions are behind it. What they then do is enslave the living child as a secured creditor to pay the debts of the dead twin, which was never a twin. It was a placenta and a cord. Can you believe this stuff? Let me read on. So he said, your fraudulent birth certificate is a corporatization of you, the living, right? And apparently 100 years ago, there was a guy called Edward Mendel House, and this was the evil way to kill the spawn of people at the moment of birth. And then it goes into the umbilical cord and what I just explained. He said it's all about property ownership. He said if you own a piece of silver and keep it as a piece of silver, it holds its value. But if you mix it with gold, it's considered corrupted. So this is what they were trying to do with us. It's securities fraud. It's a fraudulent security. And he claimed in court, Govinda, that...
Hold on. You heard his name. He said Govinda. Keep on playing from there. Then I take the stop.
The biological property of his child is his in the birth plan.
I stop right there.
No consent was given.
Okay, stop right there. All right, now bring me back up if you can live. Now did you hear that? Okay, and I'm trying to, man, good gracious, wow.
Yes, you are back live.
Okay, how did we get to 30 minutes? So I'm trying to end this. I was trying to be on here for 10 minutes, but anyway, you heard what she said. They were trying to collateralize or securitize this child for repayment of whatever their debts. Okay, that's what it is. Okay. However, this woman, how long she's been studying the UCC, you see her complexion or her face may be European. Okay, she may be from British or Britain. My fact that I'm stating is they did not consider Aboriginal title. Years ago, people did not know that Aboriginal title, the successor, had went to an emir, that is I, put a lien on it, okay? And if you study Admiralty Maritime, it talked about the United States getting into certain situations there were plagiarisms and things like that, because of course the Secretary of Commerce tried to bring vessels that were at sea inland. So I took it back out to sea. That those were operating illegally in terms of that bad behavior in Admiralty Maritime. High enforcement on the seas in terms of Admiralty Maritime, in terms of arresting and casting nets on the vessels. And of course, you must have your vessel at sea tagged in terms of if there may be pirating and if there's collision, you must be able to rectify or remedy the matter via third party till that you're not holding. I'm talking about those that are employees, not the sovereigns, okay? And that third party till must be accessible at trust where it's rendered over to the injured party, okay? So it tells you in the Uniform Commercial Code that everything is at common law. And these people are just getting to this. So they wanted to try to give this East Indian man, respects be to him, but he does not have the credits for that. And I can give you a list of people that are here that are Aboriginal indigenous that did great UCCs and they respected their ancestry. I took it a little bit further than most because I took on the entire responsibility. The configuration here was something that was necessary in terms of them saying, Mr. Belton, we can't do it for you. So the situation that she was saying, this was the greatest news since Christ. She brought up 2014. I don't know why, but that was the date. And you hear, I have the facts and I gave you the case numbers. If you were to check and correspond with my utility, you would be quite impressed that I didn't sue for USD and cash and stuff like that because it was worthless. Okay. And I know that the UCC is there in terms of the standing. So it's in closing, let's say here, I think I got a couple of more minutes. Okay. In closing, yes, I did it in terms of this specific transmitting utility or jurisdiction and standing. And at the time, it has I had collateral and I liened and levied them. And I said, see, Article 3, United States Code, Article 4 and 6 memorandums guarantees for my standing in terms of initiating at that time as mayor of Seminole, consul, granted, okay, and you have Title 28 United States Code to allow United States Inc. LLC to create United States Supreme Court and the United States Inc. Congress with injunctive resolve memorandums and guarantees for these specific sui juris citizens. I've described them, but overall, seafaring people, and of course, this is the de jure secured party service process, see served transmit utilities to the registered agents, CEOs, CFOs, secretaries of the United States, several states, and all commissions as quasi-governments. Status is under martial law. Okay, already under compliance to all customary international laws, ministerial trustees, to all Aboriginal, Indigenous, Tribals, Peoples laws, UCC1, see Title 31 USC, 5118 D and 2, illegal and felonious to demand Federal Reserve notes, Title 18 United States Criminal Code, Uniform Bonding Code for malfeasance, jurisprudence in terms of this specific process that I have prerogative. And this specific time, at that time in 2014, I was running a de jure admiralty process. Guilty party, they were, in essence, is guilty of the notorious act that committed, they did, malfeasance and commercial breach. The guilty party is and are the recipients, okay? And then I ran what you may call an internal revenue parallel, if necessary, stamped off, transmitted, went through the Virginia court circuitry. So we sued them lawfully within our standing pertaining to how we are defined. We didn't go to try to get legal precedents. We respected legal precedents existed already. You see what I'm saying? Here. And I've seen this. I've helped a lot of people that were already knowledgeable. They just didn't have this specific situation. Again, I have something different. I'm born here, Great Seal Perseverando. And when my trust and jurisdiction and all of this that pertains to our existing state and everything It had superseded the competency or the operations of the Virginia State Corporation Commission. And they were removed as they said they could not be. Some entity went in there and gutted them out of that position, and there was only a remnant, which was Jamal T. Hudson. You had Judith Jagma, which was the one who had the greatest experience in terms of oversight to transmit utilities. She has multiple degrees. So I knew that they had some type of bad behavior going on because they were too competent. The next one was Judith Jagma, Mark Christie. And then there was Kim Books. Mark Christie was the one who formulated the UCC forms that you pulled down, or at least he took credit for, whether he was telling the truth or not, but he was in the Virginia State Corporation Commission, and they had taken the elevator down from the top floor as the commissioner. So he would be correct and saying that he was recorded as commissioner. The other commissioner was Kim Books, and of course did bad behavior. Of course, all of these people were counted and they were forced to resignation in 2017. I was not signal. And of course, there was one more remnant, Jamal T. Hudson. And Jamal was the remnant. They have somebody now there, but there's only one. I did check last week, called the Virginia Supreme Court and the Virginia Secretary for the Judicial Circuitry to have good relationships between different courts. All of it's in default. So I didn't have no choice but to do this for the past 25 years, or righteously 20 years administrating these affairs. Totally 100%. Can you attest to be that these things being fact, sir? Are we righteous in what we're saying, and we have the records? Again, this is the greatest announcement. I met with those stablecoin guys and Bitcoin and all of them, and Honorable Lee had introduced a system. He was doing his situation in Britain, or before I met him, he was aware of crypto and the infidelities and trying to make it right. He was able to give our call. We come together. And of course, he has his military background in missions in every country, and was very much friendly and in friend relations with these people, good standing as I can access, and was able to structure alternations, which is an alternative to the United Nations, because of course we have the royal portfolio, as I've introduced to you. Mr. Clegg did bring on to that standing, being a knight in terms of the judiciary now, to make certain that the administration keeps consistent with people being the sovereign and being respected and not being ever contested. So since people started getting enlightened by it, then there was a configuration of people making horrific statements, where they can violate and hurt people at the United Nations, and that's not appropriate. It was not that standing for the Secretary for the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous and Tribal People. So we comprehend that it was a creation for something else, and they manifest that thought process. So Mr. Clegg was able to distinguish from that bad behavior, and was able to bring in the Aboriginal Consular Court that was domesticated as I was working on different continents everywhere internationally, but he was able to bring it within each charter, ICC, ICJ, or ICJ, assisting in terms of those Roman statutes on that side. Mr. Burris, if you would like to say anything in terms of affirmation, reaffirming these facts, it's so that we have introduced this. And of course, this is what she was talking about. This is the greatest introduction. And I have to give my men and women their props, not just talking about the I. They have stood the test of time, and things that they have done. Mr. Burris, his design, the same way recently with the crypto. Different crypto industries and platforms was monitoring his stuff, and we saw the configurations of that he had come up with, that they had copied and plagiarized. This was recently, and we counted the counterparty, and he came and stepped up for I, pertaining to being a good administrator and being accessible and being very transparent with I, facilitating the matters without struggle. Mr. Burris, if you'd like to talk a little bit about that, you can.
Just being brief, because we're coming up here on 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
I saw the video early this AM, and I was shocked. The titles of the video, and so I said, "Wow." But no, this has already been done, and or something actually at a higher level. And the records have actually been made public. And I don't know. I think this is pretty interesting. I hope that you guys who see this help us get the word out, because obviously maybe someone didn't do their homework. But yeah, coming up on 60 seconds, um, the World Marshal Authority.life. You can go to the website, and of course you can see and get more information about what Chief Judge is speaking about.
Thank you so much. Transmitting from the great city of Perseverando on this day, 4/21/2025, signing off. All liberties reserved. Much respects to you all. Thank you so much for your time.